You're watching a Week 17 edition of Picks with David. Hey, thanks for joining me. Happy New Year, everybody. The NFL season of 2022/2023 is coming down to the last 2 weeks of the year. And the playoffs and the positioning of all of the teams that are going to the playoffs and that are not going to the playoffs are on the line over these next 2 weeks. And so we're going to concentrate at looking at 5 games that directly impact the playoffs. And we'll begin with technically a playoff game. The winner's going to be in, the loser's going to be out. Let's go to Seattle. The 7-8 New York Jets at the 7-8 Seattle Seahawks. Now, I'm not going to be like these other forecasters who tell you about the 10% chance that some team makes the playoffs. I'm going to be more realistic. You got 2 teams right here in the Jets and the Seahawks, each from a different conference. Whatever team wins this game still has a chance to get into the playoffs. The team that loses is out. They're not going to make it, no matter how, many 10 other things are going to happen. Let's be real here. Now, the Jets get Mike White back at quarterback, and that's good for their offense. The defense has been wonderful all season long, and the Jets defense is led by head coach Robert Saleh, who used to be the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. So he knows these Seattle Seahawks very well, and I think that'll be a big bonus for them going from the East Coast clear to the West Coast to play in Seattle, because they'll have a lot of familiarity with the kind of system that they're going to be running. Now, the Jets have been running the football quite well despite the loss of Breece Hall on injured reserve with the torn ACL. Knight, Carter, Robinson, it's a nice mix, and they're able to establish the run. That opens up the play-action passing for a quarterback that can actually get the ball down the field in those situations in Mike White. Now, I think they've got some pretty good receivers for the Jets in Elijah Moore and also in Garrett Wilson. And so I expect them, along with their tight ends, to get open and make some plays against the Seattle defense that's been weakened down the stretch here. As for Seattle, Geno Smith's made the Pro Bowl and having a career year. He has some great receivers in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett to get the ball to. And with the return of Kenneth Walker, hopefully their running game will reappear, because it has disappeared in his absence. And so the Seahawks are coming off a loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, but they played them tough there. They're back at home, and this is going to be a very great matchup here. I think both these teams obviously have so much to play for. They win, and they still got a shot to make the playoffs. I'm going to take the New York Jets in this matchup. I just like their overall defense better. I think that they have a better shot at making big plays in the running game as of late. And I think the Jets win the game and continue their path to the playoffs. Game number 2 is the 6-9 Carolina Panthers at the 7-8 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Once again, we've got a game here where this is basically a playoff game. The winner of this game, if it's Tampa, they win the division and they are in the playoffs. If it's Carolina, both teams still have a chance going into the final week of the season to win the division and to go into the playoffs. And it'll depend on what happens next week. But Tampa can eliminate all doubt this week if they beat Carolina. Now, Carolina has really been running the football very effectively, despite trading away Christian McCaffrey to the 49ers at midseason. At quarterback, Sam Darnold is starting to make plays, much like they thought he would when he was one of the top picks of the draft just a few years ago for the New York Jets. Tampa is still struggling offensively to run the football despite having some very excellent players. It's all about that offensive line, which has plagued them all season long. Now, Carolina goes into Tampa. They've got a lot to play for. Tampa needs to win one of the last two games of the season in order to clinch this division. I don't think they're going to get it done today on Sunday. I think Carolina has a much better offense. Their defense has been playing well. Tampa, really, they don't belong in the playoffs the way that they have been playing over the last several weeks and throughout the season, to be honest with you. Tom Brady can win one in the end if they keep the game close, and it can happen like that today. But I'm just going to go ahead and take the Carolina Panthers to win this game today in Tampa Bay. Game number 3 is the 12-3 Minnesota Vikings at the 7-8 Green Bay Packers. Now, the Vikings have already sewed up the NFC North. They're in the playoffs, but they still have a slight chance of picking up that number 1 seed in the NFC if Philadelphia doesn't manage to win at least one of their last 2 games of the year. Now, I expect Philadelphia to win, and so the best that Minnesota could do is solidify the number 2 seed in the NFC conference. They can do that and knock the Green Bay Packers out of the playoffs with the victory today in Green Bay. Now, the Packers, of course, have a lot to play for, but they beat up on some relatively weak teams over the last several weeks. They were down in the game against Miami. Tua had the concussion and nobody really knew about it, and that's when he started playing bad and threw the 3 interceptions. That led to Green Bay actually beating Miami in Miami on Christmas Day. So now you've got Aaron Rodgers. They can run the football with the 2 guys there in Jones and Dillon. The defense has been suspect throughout the year, and it showed on opening day when Minnesota lit them up for a lot of yards through the air. Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in the NFL this year. Kirk Cousins, very efficient. And although they haven't run the ball as well as they would like to over the last several weeks, I think the Vikings are the better team here. While the weather may be some bit of a factor in this game, if the Viking defense stands up at all against the running game of the Packers, the Vikings will win the game and the Packers will be out. And that's my prediction for today, as I'll take the Vikings. Flexed into Sunday Night Football, the 7-8 Pittsburgh Steelers are at the 10-5 Baltimore Ravens. The Steelers haven't had a losing record in Mike Tomlin's tenure as head coach, and they must win this game tonight on Sunday Night Football to continue that streak for at least one more week. They need to win both of their last 2 games of the year for that to continue to occur, and if they do, there's a chance they could get into the playoffs. Now, Baltimore can eliminate Pittsburgh by knocking them off tonight in Baltimore. But it looks like, once again, they're going to play without Lamar Jackson, as he, 1, doesn't have a new contract, and 2, is hobbled with a knee injury. The running game that features Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins has done enough to get the Baltimore Ravens by over the last couple of weeks. The backup quarterback has been stable and steady as he tries to get the ball down the field to a less than spectacular group of wide receivers. Now, the defense is what the big thing is here for Baltimore. They were struggling earlier in the season, and when they brought in Roquan Smith, the defense has dominated since then. And I expect them to play a major part in this particular game. You've got the rookie Kenny Pickett at quarterback, and he's got some good players all around him. He needs more experience and a better offensive line, but their defense can hold back the Baltimore Ravens as well. And I think that if Pittsburgh wants to stay on track, they want to do the things that they have done over the last several weeks, I think they'll continue to try to run the football. They'll get the ball to who I think is their best 2 targets, Pat Freiermuth, the tight end, and the rookie George Pickens. They are the bigger playmakers. While Deontay Johnson makes a lot of catches, I just don't see him really spreading the field and making the big plays that Pittsburgh needs in order to win. And so I think that going into Baltimore on Sunday night, this is a classic AFC North bloodbath. They're going to beat each other up good, but in the end, Baltimore doesn't necessarily need the game. Pittsburgh does in order to stay in the playoff chase, and I'm going to take the Steelers to win the game on Sunday night. Monday Night Football on ESPN in what could be a playoff preview. The Buffalo Bills at 12-3 take on the 11-4 Cincinnati Bengals. As of right now, the Buffalo Bills are the number 1 seed in the AFC, and the Cincinnati Bengals are the 3 seed. However, that can all change if Cincinnati were to beat Buffalo. In this case, the Buffalo Bills could drop to the 3 seed in the event that the Bengals were to win the game, because Kansas City would move up in the standings, and so would Cincinnati due to the tiebreaker. Now, Buffalo and Cincinnati both have big-time quarterbacks. They've got great offensive lines. They've got great running games when they decide to use it. They have the ability to pass down the field. They have playmakers at wide receiver. But the Buffalo Bills have the better defense, in my opinion. They've been one of the best defenses in the NFL over the last couple of years. And Cincinnati, while they are growing defensively, I don't think they're nearly as good as they have been. And I think that when it comes to the players that they have right now, here are the things that are most concerning to me for Cincinnati. They just lost one of their tackles in La'el Collins, and Buffalo has a pass rush. Not nearly as good as it did earlier in the year when Von Miller was still with the team before his injury, but they do have a pass rush. Now, Cincinnati's playing at home. I think they've got a lot on the line in their mind, and they need to win this game to stay ahead of the Baltimore Ravens in the event that Baltimore were to win. Because if Baltimore wins and Cincinnati loses, Baltimore would skip over and take the lead in the division due to the tiebreakers. Now, for me in the game, I think that it's going to be a shootout. I think both teams will get the ball down the field. I think that playing at home will have some effect for Cincinnati. It's a big deal. It's on Monday night. It's a possible playoff, game here. Preview. And so I'm looking at this game, and I tell you, at first I wanted to take the Cincinnati Bengals to win the game, but that's because, I'm a Kansas City Chief fan, and I want them to get the number 1 seed. But when it all comes down to it, I really believe the Buffalo Bills are the better team. I think the Bills are going to win the game on the strength of their defense and Josh Allen's mobility to get down and around and make plays, keeping plays alive and making some plays down the field because, things are going to break down against this Bengal defense. And I think Buffalo wins the game on Monday night. So now let's take a look at the playoff picture in the AFC. As we said before, Buffalo and Kansas City are tied, but Buffalo beat Kansas City earlier in the year. If Cincinnati were to beat Buffalo, Kansas City moves into the number 1 slot if they continue to win. And they play the Broncos here this Sunday, so it's highly likely that that will happen. The Bengals need to win so that they can move up in the standings and also hold off the Baltimore Ravens. And the Jacksonville Jaguars that are currently in the 4th spot, they're going to be playing today against the Houston Texans in a game that, only for keeping their momentum alive does it matter, because the matchup next week against the Tennessee Titans will be for the division no matter what. So you look here, you can see that the Dolphins are ahead of New England, the Jets, Tennessee, and Pittsburgh. Let's just say that for all intents and purposes, if the Miami Dolphins beat the New England Patriots, then the Miami Dolphins are going to win and go in to the playoffs. I don't think that will eliminate the New England Patriots. Tennessee, the ability for them to get in and out is all based on the game against Jacksonville. The winner of that game will be in, the loser will be out next week for the division, which will probably be the Sunday night football game because of its implications. The Jets can stay alive with a win against the Seahawks, but if they don't win, they're obviously out. Same thing for Pittsburgh against Baltimore. Now let's take a look at the NFC playoff picture. You can see the Philadelphia Eagles have the top spot right now. They need one more victory based on their head-to-head victory over the Vikings earlier in the year to clinch not only the division over the Cowboys, but the number one overall seed in the NFC. If they lose the next two games, that would open the door for the Cowboys in the division and the Vikings in the conference. As for San Francisco, right now they are solidly in the number 3 spot no matter what. Tampa Bay in the number 4 slot right now. If they win today against Carolina, would not only eliminate the Panthers, but also the Saints from the playoffs. If the Vikings beat the Packers, that would eliminate them from the playoff chase for all intents and purposes. And so, if you look here, you can see that the Giants have the 6th seed currently, and they would need to continue to win, and if they beat the Indianapolis Colts today, then they will definitely be in the playoffs for the NFC. Washington is hanging in there by virtue of their tie with New York. Seattle needs to beat the Jets to stay in contention, and Detroit also needs to win against Chicago to stay in contention for the playoffs as we go in to week number 18 next week. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the complete breakdown of the NFC and AFC playoff pictures as we go into week 17 today. Going to be a fun weekend, and especially Monday, of football here in the National Football League. Like and subscribe my videos to make sure you don't miss anything as we head into the playoffs real soon. Thanks again for joining me here on YouTube and Facebook, and we'll see you next Sunday for more football action and predictions right here on Picks with David. Happy New Year!